Under the sun's unforgiving glare, Julia Spencer lay bound to the rough bark of a solitary acacia, every muscle in her body trembling from exhaustion. The African savanna stretched endlessly in every direction, a sea of parched grass that crackled underfoot like brittle parchment. Above her, a pride of lions crept closer, their golden eyes glinting with curiosity and hunger. Julia's chest heaved. Her throat felt as if sandpaper had scratched her every breath away. She wondered, in that unbearable moment, whether the wild she had chosen to protect would ultimately be the one to destroy her, or, perhaps, the one that would save her next. Julia's story began thousands of miles away, in a modest apartment overlooking the shimmering waters of San Francisco Bay. Each dawn, sunlight pirouetted across the surface of the bay, painting the city's glass towers with liquid gold. She loved her life. A steady position at the Los Angeles Zoo, friendly banter over weekend coffees and impulsive coastal road trips that felt as endless as the sky. But beneath the surface of her contentment, a question gnawed. Was she truly making a difference, or merely observing creatures behind steel bars? From her earliest memories, Julia had believed that every living being deserved a chance to roam free, to thrive beyond captive enclosures. When a well-meaning friend slipped her a flyer inviting volunteers to Kenya, Julia's heart leapt. She applied immediately. Within months, she found herself trading city traffic for the dusty trails of Masai Nita Reserve. Family and friends pleaded for her to stay, their voices laced with fear and confusion. Why would you abandon such comfort for hardship and danger? But Julia only smiled, for her heart no longer lived in California. It lived under the endless African sky. Arriving in the reserve, Julia discovered extremes she had never imagined. By day, the sun hammered down so mercilessly that the earth cracked into irregular shards. By night, the temperature plunged, and winds carried the eerie laughter of hyenas and the distant, bone-shaking roars of lions. It was in that vast, untamed place that Julia felt most alive, until a single lapse nearly cost her everything. On her very first week, fueled by wonder at a herd of zebras leaping across a distant rise, Julia broke from her team to snap photographs. She thought it harmless, just 5 minutes to capture their grace. But the savannah offered no mercy. A sudden wind whipped grit into her eyes. Dust obliterated the faint trail, and in an instant, Julia stood utterly alone, stripped of navigation, radio, and reassurance. For a full hour she wandered, heart pounding against her ribcage, until a worried patrol finally homed in on her faint radio ping. That moment of bone-deep isolation etched a lesson into her spirit. In the wild, uncontrolled curiosity could be lethal. Yet that mistake was the crucible that forged her resolve. She returned to base with newfound humility, determined to temper her wanderlust with caution. Months of guidance and supervision passed before her first solo patrol assignment arrived. She packed meticulously. Ample water, maps that could withstand the elements, reliable radio gear, and a small array of self-defense tools. At dawn, she slid into the driver's seat of a battered off-road vehicle, every sense alert, every nerve alive with purpose. She convinced herself she was prepared for anything. Nothing could have prepared her for what unfolded just an hour later. The sky was impossibly blue, a flawless vault of emptiness. By 7 a.m., the sun's heat already sizzled the ground beneath her tires. As she rounded a gentle bend, Julia spotted a grey truck half hidden in thorn bushes, its faded paint blending with the landscape. No license plates, no convoy markers. 2 men stood nearby, their faces unreadable in the glare. Curious yet cautious, Julia killed the engine, grabbed her binoculars, and inched closer. Her heart thudded. The men stood silent, watching. When she signaled them to halt, they moved without resistance. As Julia approached, her pulse pounded in her ears. Inside the truck bed lay a full-grown male rhino, its massive legs bound by cruel shackles. Its hide was slick with sweat and laced with fresh blood around a wound on its shoulder. The realization struck Julia like lightning. This was no routine obstruction. It was a poaching operation. Before she could radio for backup, the men seized her, yanking her arms behind her back. And seconds later, she found herself tied to a sturdy tree deep in the brush. The sun intensified its assault. Sweat trickled into her eyes, and the dust stung her lungs. Panic whispered in her ear this was the end. But even as fear climbed like ivy through her chest, her thoughts drifted to the rhino's terrified gaze, and a fierce determination flared within her. Poaching remains an epidemic. Over 500 African rhinos are killed each year for their horns, fueling a ruthless black market. Julia shivered, half from heat and half from the horror of knowing how close she'd come to death, and how many others like her might not survive. Then, over the crackle of her fading hope, she heard it, a soft rustling in the grass. She turned her head as a group of lionesses emerged in slow-motion grace, circling the clearing. Their powerful bodies moved like liquid gold in the sunlight. Julia felt her breath catch as the lionesses halted, forming a silent cordon, hearts pounding louder than drum beats. She watched as the tall grass behind her parted, and out strode a massive male lion. His mane was ragged, and across his mighty chest stood a fresh scar. Instinct and memory collided in her mind. It was him, the very lion she had risked her life to rescue months ago. A year earlier, Julia had discovered that same lion ensnared in a metal trap, its leg bleeding, its spirit broken. Her colleagues had considered the danger too great, but Julia had stayed beside him for hours, speaking in low tones until trust blossomed. Against all odds, the lion allowed rescuers to free him. He recovered under her watchful care, yet never rejoined his pride. He lingered near the base, a silent guardian. Now that guardian approached, muscles rippling beneath tawny fur. He lowered his head, his claws scraping at her ropes. Each grating snap sent tremors through Julia's very soul. When the last binding fell away, she collapsed into the dust, tears mingling with grit on her cheeks. The lion nudged her shoulder gently, as though to confirm her safety, then turned to the poachers, who froze in awe and terror. Julia scrambled to her feet, every joint singing in protest. Her voice cracked as she grabbed the radio handset. "Poaching incident! Rhino in danger! Send support immediately!" A distant crackle of response galvanized her heart. Within 40 minutes, local police and rangers thundered through the bush, tracking the deep tire imprints in the red dust. By midday, 2 poachers lay cuffed at the reserve boundary, justice riding in on the roar of engines. But the story was far from over. The rhino, terrified and bleeding, needed care. Officers gently lowered it from the truck bed and guided it to a makeshift veterinary tent. Its breaths came in tremulous gasps, each inhalation a reminder of lives hanging by the thinnest threads. Julia knelt at its side, whispering soothing words as a vet cleaned and stitched the wound. 3 days later, under a still sky turning rose gold at sunset, Julia led the rhino back to the rolling hills by Lake Nita. With a gentle hand and trembling voice, she coaxed it through the open gate. The rhino paused, nostrils flaring, then stepped forward into the tall grass, each giant footfall a testament to survival. That night, Julia returned to her humble cabin perched from the reserve's edge. The structure creaked under its corrugated roof, but inside, the warmth of a small lamp cast dancing shadows on rough timber walls. She brewed tea, placed a jazz record on a scratched player, and settled at a tiny table by the window. Her journal lay open, pages fluttering in the soft breeze. She wrote, "Today I witnessed 2 miracles. The gratitude of a lion who remembered kindness, and the resilience of a rhino granted a second chance. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I know that what we give in wholehearted compassion returns to us in ways we cannot foresee." Outside, the night thrummed with life. In the distance, a pair of amber eyes flickered between the grasses, reminders that in the wild, memory and gratitude endure far beyond human understanding. Julia smiled, unafraid and deeply grateful, knowing that kindness sown today might bloom into tomorrow's salvation. If this journey has stirred your heart, share it with someone who believes the world is worth protecting. And remember, every small act of kindness, however quiet, may one day roar back to save you when you least expect it.